Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I've been here before. I'm sorry, yeah. Is that better? Yeah. Good evening. I've grown up in Rhode Island my whole life. I live in Warwick. I have 9 kids, 17 grandchildren. So life is important, and I know it's important to you as well. I've spoken here before, and Council just went through what is an excellent legal memorandum that you all have. I just would recommend, I know you voted for further study. I would recommend that you study this memo, and Council did a very good job in explaining it. But even tonight, when I heard the representative talk about her bill, she mentioned the federal statute that bans partial birth abortion. She said, so that would be good. And so that's great. When in fact, the statute doesn't exist in Rhode Island, and under her law, partial birth abortion would be allowed. So there's such imprecision and lack of detail in a rush to codify Roe v. Wade that we're going beyond Roe v. Wade. And this does require further study because it's very imprecise. And in fact, the representative also focused on that Section 3, the restriction language. There's nothing authorizing the state, there's no prohibitions of any type of abortion beyond life and health of the mother. They can do it, and it's not sneaky, it's just unsaid. There is no state enforcement prohibiting non-therapeutic abortions post-viability. It doesn't exist. It's gone. So that, in fact, any type of abortion is allowed under this proposed law. Because in the beginning, you've got the viability and Roe v. Wade protecting it. Then you've got the health and life of the mother. But then there's no Rhode Island prohibition of any abortion. So please read the memo. It's really important, I think, to further study. And, you know, I've been here. This is the 3rd time we've done this, and it's the 3rd time you've done this, with the notion that Roe v. Wade somehow is going to be overturned because President Trump is the president. That's the premise of this, is we have to rush to codify this. And I think that's a false premise. There's no present danger. There's no imminent case. Those of us, all of us follow this, right? There's no case pending before the Supreme Court on this issue. We would know about this months in advance. It might take years for a case like that to come up. And then wouldn't we all benefit from what the Supreme Court might say? And then would we benefit to make laws in response to what they might say at the time, if in fact they overturn Roe v. Wade? So this is kind of always like we have to do this or else somehow these rights will disappear. There's no threat to Roe v. Wade at the present time at all in what those rules do. But these statutes go beyond Roe v. Wade. And it's an opportunity, and the proponents are trying to use the threat of a quick Supreme Court decision to codify law that's extreme. I suggest that it's an opportunity, because Roe v. Wade is not threatened, to reconsider all of these issues, to rethink what this really means. It's scary, actually, to be sitting here in 2019 and be deciding about killing babies. And what we know about science today is way different than what they knew in 1972. We know they can save these little ones. These little ones feel pain at a young age. What are we doing? And why are we doing it? Isn't there a better way to think about this? And shouldn't further study mean we don't have to do it this year? There's no case before the Supreme Court right now that threatens the abortion people. None. There's no reason to pass statutes that go beyond that. There's good reason to study this. And that's, I'm a lawyer, so I guess my instinct is this. Those little ones have no one talking for them. They have nobody defending them. Who can defend them? You. You're the only ones who can defend them. Why wouldn't we reconsider what we're doing? And I've got it in my list, but I'm going to go through it just because I think it's a powerful statement about where we are. You've all done it. I know you have, because we've all done it. We sit around in these times and look at what's happening in our country, and we see the hatred, we see the lack of compromise, we see the lack of even Congress and how they treat each other and what they say about each other. And we all bemoan that, right? In my family, we call it baying at the moon. We sit around and do it, but it's serious. And we all have done it, right? And we all kind of long for other times when people seem to be more considerate. People seem to be more sensitive to one another. Where we didn't claim white privilege, where we didn't claim race, we just were trying to get along and we were trying to make progress. We all yearn for that, I think, right? So, what do we got? We have disorder and confusion in our country. And I'll go through a list. I think it'll resonate with most of us. We have the loneliness caused by the sexual revolution. We have the deterioration of stable family life. We have the lack of commitment by men to fatherhood. We have the impact of pornography on the minds and lives of many people. We have exploitation and degradation of women, even though we had the women's rights movement and feminism. It's gone worse. Increasing depression and suicide rates. We're all worried about that. There was a front page story in the Journal about that. The rise of violence in schools and elsewhere. We wonder why. And it isn't just guns. There's something else going on. The radical individualism and selfish materialism of all of us. The loss of kindness, generosity, self-sacrifice as fundamental virtues. Virtues that would help mothers and fathers. Virtues that we could help people who want to save a baby rather than kill a baby. I could go on, and I think you could too. But we'd be short-sighted if we didn't see all of this as a piece, and the defects in our culture are connected. Consider how deeply this mess goes into the loss of respect, lack of love, lack of concern for one another. We're worried about it. We see it. It's in our entertainment. It's in the media. It's in our government. It's in our lives. It's in our business. Why? It's an evidence of a growing callousness, an indifference towards the dignity of people. It's a hardening of our hearts. Worst of all, hanging over every one of us for several generations now, is the tragedy of abortion. We allow the killing of innocent human life mostly for convenience. Infected by this policy, our culture is indeed becoming a culture of death. Like kryptonite for Superman, the presence of abortion in our culture is a weakness for all of us. It weakens us. Without us realizing it, it drags us down. It hardens our hearts. It hardens everyone, adults and children alike. The anti-life agenda, represented by unnecessary overreaching legislative proposals should be rejected. We should be restudying these issues. We talk about what we want in Rhode Island. How about some leadership on the most important thing in our country, life? How about that? Would that be good? So let's wake up and change our direction. Let's not be afraid to say these things. Just because Roe v. Wade was passed, that doesn't mean it's magic. So why would we make it solid and go beyond it? Why? Why wouldn't we just study it? It's not going to go away. The pro-choice people will be protected. No case is up there. Why don't we look at it? Get a second look at this. That's what I say. And look, I know I'm a lawyer and you wanted a legal thing, but this memo's good and counsel was really good on it. There's problems with all of this legally, but we have more problems. We have more problems than this. And I try to touch on them. I don't mean to sound like a lecturer, but damn, we got to do something. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, both of you. Next witnesses are, oh, sure, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, councils. Something I believe was touched on in the first presentation was our fetal homicide laws. And I believe that every state in New England except Maine has a fetal homicide law. And if you go to H5127, the quick child statute on page 6, and that begins on line 2, are either of you aware of another statute which would punish a third party from killing a fetus other than general assault statutes on our books? Or is this the only way to go after a third party for killing a fetus other than assault statutes?
I'm not aware of a statute. And I should know the answer to this, but I think at common law, I mean, other than criminal statutes, I think we protect when an unborn baby is hurt in an accident. I think there are rights for that little one. And if it isn't the case, it should be, because it is in many states. And you know, what someone's trying to do with this statute is get rid of the inconsistency, right? It's uncomfortable, because that's a life that's being protected by the criminal statute, which we're now trying to get rid of. But there's a common law right of when a mother gets hurt or dies, the negligence of the person who caused it can go to the young one too.
But that's a civil cause of action.
Civil cause of action.
But in terms of criminal prosecution,
I do not know of any others. I'm sorry.
and I don't either. I believe this is our fetal homicide law, and I can't imagine that it's the sponsor's intent to absolve third parties who knowing and willfully injure or kill a fetus. For instance, a boyfriend who slips a drug into a pregnant woman's drink or something to abort the pregnancy without her knowledge. It seems like we prosecute that individual now for manslaughter under the quick child statute, and by eliminating that, the only way the state could go after that individual is through our general assault statutes, and I just can't imagine that that would be the sponsor's intent. And just to clarify it, there's no federal constitutional right for a third party to abort someone else's pregnancy. So this, by eliminating the quick child statute, we would be going in excess of the rights codified in Roe v. Wade and its progeny?
Well, yeah, I think you point out the disorder and kind of the illogic of this, right? We want to protect the little one in the womb from crime or from injury or from a third party, but it's okay for someone to have an abortion and go in and see a doctor and kill a little one because they've chosen to do that. And nobody defends the little. So it's convenient to get rid of anything that seems inconsistent with the abortion, when in fact that's crying out to us that why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? So I think it's a good example of why we need to get rid of the fiction that there's no life there that's worth protecting.
Thank you. And just for the committee, I can't imagine that the sponsor would want to absolve a third party who knowingly kills a fetus without the permission of the mother. I just can't imagine that would be her intent, and so I suggest that
I
the
agree.
sponsor
I
would
don't think it's
go
her
back and
intent
take a
either.
second look at eliminating the quick child statute.
There are many
Thank you.
reasons to look over these statutes closely. Thank you.
Thank you.